C, trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and then D, not only trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with this month, but how I'm going to deal with subsequent months. So I don't have an answer for this, but I think a paragraph or something about the psychological impact is of value. And I know you have daily interactions with some of your clients. Perhaps sitting down with somebody that has a good ability to vocalize some of this and just take notes. Because I was the fiscal impact, the actual extra travel time and stuff like that. Just changing from a position to where you knew where you were going to get your medicine the next day and now being in a position to where I'm not even sure, that has impact, so that was my thought. I saw Shona and
I think that there's also a intimidation and a bullying effect from the letters going to a few and then never knowing where the others are going to fall. Like you said, I don't know how to put that in good phrasing, except for there's a lot of even definition legally of bullying going on right now in America, and I definitely feel like we're being intimidated and we're being bullied, even if we haven't gotten the letter. We're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to fall, I guess. State of psych ops.
But worse than that is 28 years, going on 30 years now, I've been doing healings in this area, and I've seen many people who would love to smoke cannabis who have very much symptoms of diseases that could be remedied or made livable with it, but instead they just don't have the money and they just don't smoke. And I see these people, period. That's just the other day I was down shopping and I had this guy in front of me, didn't recognize me since I grew my and oh my God, he looks like shit. I mean, these people, there's toxicity of the pharmaceuticals, decades. I was like almost 30 years I've been doing this. I've seen these people. They're my own case studies. And the ones that don't smoke because they don't want to get involved with us, they don't want to, they just can't afford it. They're retired for 28 years of AC Transit. Better to move to Santa Rosa. That's where all the cool people move. So it's like, and these people, the toxicity, the skin, it's just the pharmaceutical it's just deadly what these things. I just gasp when I see these people, and they don't last long. They don't last long. And if they had cannabis, they would last so much longer and have their lives would be better. But so you're just scraping the tip of the iceberg there. It's hideous,
Yeah, I agree that there's a host of issues around that we can focus on. I think because our impact report is really trying to narrow down and talk about the effect that the federal government and the issuance of their DOJ letters since October of 2011, that's kind of what I want to focus on is if you throw a rock into a pond, there's ripples, and that's what I want to talk about is those ripples. I see the DOJ letters as a giant rock being thrown in our pond, and let's talk about all the ripples that went out from them making that splash. I think that you bring up kind of a correlation of what I was talking about when it comes to just the intimidation and I know that in talking to dispensary operators, they're oftentimes, the first time they see another operator, oh, you guys didn't get a letter or anything. Oh, no, I didn't. We're doing great. You didn't get a letter. It's a subject of conversation, it's a subject of concern. It's something that people don't talk about necessarily to non-dispensary operators, but they're certainly talking amongst themselves and regularly trying to keep apprised of the latest FOIA requests, sunshine requests, and everything else from the government. So,
I would say it even has a bullying effect to the point that if you had been thinking about opening up a dispensary, or your, group of collectives was getting prepared to, you'd certainly even have second thoughts,
Oh, no doubt about it.
There's a huge bully, the big bully rock has, like, future consequences too, where everything is kind of pushed back for a while.
There's a cloud of uncertainty, I guess is how they would phrase it, right?
Right.
They would talk about that. It creates anxiety for everybody involved.
Well, let's talk uplifting things now. This bugs me out.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not here to...
I understand.
I'm not here to raise people's spirits. We're talking about the reality right now.
Yeah.
The other thing that we don't have data on, that I think could be of value, is talking about what has actually happened in the neighborhood of these closures. What do I mean by that? For example, Divinity Tree on Polk Street. My understanding, I can't confirm it from personal experience, but my understanding from complaints from neighbors, from a couple of articles written by Mr. Roberts, and just also from talking with people, is that in fact the block has increased in terms of criminal activity, increased in terms of loitering in that area, and increased in terms of vandalism. I can also speak from personally observing it that the same has occurred on 9th Street at HopeNet's prior location. The block virtually had no loiterers during the time and point when they were open. You go by now, any given day, they have actually removed the graffiti that popped up immediately after they closed, but still go down, that block has a lot of people just lurking, for lack of a better word.
Speed freeze.
Well, actually, to be more exact, there's a return of gang activity to both of the blocks that Divinity Tree and HopeNet were on. And when I did Reagan's interview, it was absolutely clear that it was, and the neighbors have said to him, it's actually the return of some of the gang members that have been there prior.
Oh, no.
I wish we had pictures of I guess I could try to scour their website, see if there are pictures of the block when they're open, and then you could take like a subsequent picture of the block now.
I think that, if we can get we don't have to get all of them, but just to get one or two would be, before and afters, would be great.
As far as Medford being that's, nearly on 16th and Mission.
I could try to scour their website, see if there are pictures of the block when they're open, and then you could take like a subsequent picture of the block now.
I think that, if we can get we don't have to get all of them, but just to get one or two would be, before and afters, would be great.
As far as Medford being that's, nearly on 16th and Mission, I mean, the activity there, I think we're all aware.
So let's make a list. Do you mind seeing if you could do photos? The three we're identifying is Divinity, HopeNet, and Metathrive. Mr. Nice Guy right there on Valencia.
Thomas right next, right down
It's
there.
actually come up
I knew he'd
because
leave
they
it
built
there.
like a new vintage furniture discountery next door, so it's actually it looks
A little bit, okay.
You wouldn't prove our point, that's for sure.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I did that one.
If that location is a good demonstration, one, it's the highest impact
I don't
on
like when
this
I use
report as
language
well,
like that.
because of the fact that that is the Divinity Tree.
Right.
Because that's literally where the Hayes Valley 1001 north of Market went from 1 MCD to 0. That's the highest impact.
So that's
He's a
that's
Christian.
the one to get.
We're the barbarians.
And we can also show the impact on that neighborhood, and that neighborhood is,
Divinity Tree image.
That's me, I just want to
All right, I think those, would be very good and, help to illustrate. Aside from a map, aside from photos, I think we have most of the info we're looking at. Is there anything else we want to include, for,
Now that I think of what I was going to say, maybe doesn't go in it, but this part of me wanted to point out that 1 in 6 voters in San Francisco identifies as disabled American. And I know that, we've broken it down into super visual districts, and it just, I guess it probably doesn't fit in, but some part of me feels like saying to the supervisors, don't dismiss this, because that's a lot of, when we're talking about the distance to travel, we also vote,
Wait, let me ask you that statistic. You said 1
He's calculating everything right now.
That's an insanely high percent if it's true.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
A lot of people take their
So it was-
retirement here.
So where I got that information was the Mayor's Office on Disabilities presentation to the Board of Supervisors.
Don't forget, the AIDS people all flocked here when, because this was the only mecca for them. You know?
Well, it's a mecca for people with mental health issues,
Right, all
for
those
people with
things.
HIV,
San Francisco.
for
So you're
people-
saying,
It's just voters.
yeah, I mean, but it's just vote, I mean, that's another,
Well,
1 in 6 voters, let's assume it's 1 in 6 people of the population, you're trying to tell me there's basically 175,000 out of the 800,000 in this city identify as disabled. I find that hard to believe if that's the case. 175,000, basically just shy of 20% of the city identifies as disabled. I fully recognize your point that it's been a long time rallying point for people with AIDS, moving from not just throughout this country, but from throughout the world.
Well, it's been proven it's not about your genetic code, it's your zip code that determines if it's, I watch all the spin shows, so I know that's a fact. Rachel Maddow even talked about it. It's not your genetic code, it's your zip code. Like people who live in Idaho, don't have as good a chance as we do in here. San Francisco is like a mecca for anybody with any kind of an ailment, because the rest of it, believe me, I've tried to live in other places. That's why I kiss the ground every morning I live in San Francisco, because I know.
I like what you're saying, I hear why you're saying it. I don't think it's really appropriate to include in this. And I'd be more comfortable including it if I had, a actual hard and fast statistic from either the registrar of voters or somebody.
It's from the Mayor's Office.
It's from the Mayor's Office?
If
Okay.
I had a better, so the whole delivery argument has been used since we started the permitting process from the other side.
Oh, it's been a consistent one, and that's why I think that we at least need to comment on it. I don't want to focus a lot of energy, and what I'm talking is 2, maybe 3 sentences, but I think we need to include just a statement on delivery. Well, I mean, including 1 sentence, you can barely say anything in a sentence unless I make it a dependent clause that, has several commas and, goes on.
I think my average paragraph is like 1 or 2 sentences.
Well, I guess the reason why I'm leery of it, to be transparent, is I don't like the whole spin that was going on at the task force level and the turning over of people to the district attorney. Like, that whole thing to me was very sour.
No, all I want to comment on it is the fact, realistically, that delivery is not filling the gap of having the brick and mortar stores.
Right.
And that, if anything, it is only a small patch. That's basically the gist of what I wanted to give. Because at a brick and mortar, you're right about delivery, you're right about, access. If I walk in, as long as my paperwork's copacetic, I'm going to, know I get served. Doesn't mean necessarily the same thing if I call a delivery service. They're going to look at where I'm at, a host of things, how much money I have, whether or not they're going to come. Just because I call doesn't mean they're going to come to my house.
And you don't know, when you're talking about the reliability of the delivery services, you don't know how trustworthy, as you're pointing out, that delivery service is. If it's an organization's come and rob me, rather than actually be even, a legitimate business.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on delivery before we kind of move on?
I think also with the delivery aspect, there's an aspect of just not, it's just only available for a certain socioeconomic demographic in our city. I mean,
that's basically the point I'm making with the minimums.
That's what you're saying,
yeah.
It's just like, you have to have, like, the lowest one is $25. Well, if you go to a brick and mortar dispensary, I can usually get, a pre-roll for under $10 at most places and not have to have $25.
Mm-hmm. That's it, exactly it. All right. Anything else on, so that's delivery. I think we've done a fair amount of good brainstorming. Let's go over, just real quickly, I think you agreed to we're going to try to do some photos. The before and after of the 3 locations we identified. Mike and you are going to work on changing the data also into a graphic?
I'll take the data first, and then I'll get that to you, Ken, and then you can polish that into some more presentational.
I don't know the easiest way, but I think the ideal way would be if you can somehow get on an 8.5 by 11 a map of the city. And I'll leave the rest of it to you, but that's roughly what we're talking about graphic-wise.
You kind of want to do two maps, one for the zip code and one for the supervisor districts. This is kind of how we. Because I just figure for the supervisors, they want to know by district, but also to really show access, you've got to show by smaller areas than supervisors.
I like Derek's thing about the main uni lines too. I think that
I
having
can
that on
take the districts and make them more of like a bar chart, because that kind of will show the zero really well. You know what I mean? On a map, the zero won't show up unless I color code the map as well. But if I'm a bar graph, you know, before and after, and it's like 3, 0, and here's your district. So that might help more. But yeah,
I think that's only the zip code one that's going to show that. If the supervisory one, there's actually none of the supervisory districts went to 0 that weren't already 0.
So then, you know, we'll flip it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll get you guys can work on that. And I
then
think
a small blurb on the emotional, social, and kind of
psychological, yeah. Exactly. Brainstorm on that, you know, try to come up with something, because, you know, really, I think if we asked, you know, went out to 20 people who are in this community and asked them, you know, since these DOJ letters, does it make you feel better about accessing medical cannabis or worse? Almost all of them are going to say worse, or at least, you know, more skeptical about it. And so I just want that reflection as well in there, even if it's very brief, because it's true. There's a degree of psychological warfare being waged by the federal government, and you know, I would say the average person is, you know, reacts to it one way. Somebody with that's already coping in their life with a disability gets the added pressure of that on top of it. It just makes, you know, from my experience, a lot of times even dealing with a disability more difficult, because it's just added pressure in general.
The fear, living in fear.
Yeah, and so I don't have a good couple of sentences to summarize that, but if you can brainstorm on that, that would be great. Because I think that's something that we all acknowledge exists. We also probably realize it's hard to vocalize and, you know, put into words too, and it is intentional. I mean, it's part of, I mean, for example, why yesterday did the DEA press release about Colorado and Washington? Well, the entire reason they did it was to try to discourage them with going forward with their recreational, you know, decriminalization. So
President Obama laughed at a reporter who asked him about cannabis, and he laughed, and he says, "Not going to happen on my watch." Wow. He just laughed, the son of a gun.
When?
Oh, during the election, some reporter put a microphone in front of his mouth, and I remember vividly, he actually thought it was a joke. He laughed. He says, "Not going to happen on my watch."
I think they'll do something a
Bill
little
Press
bit further
asked
on
him today.
second term.
Yeah, I think as far as
He got more of a
Colorado
positive
goes, the fact that they authorized home growing of small quantities, and the fact that the state of Colorado is not going to go and arrest people, presumably, for complying with their state law, and the federal government doesn't have the resources to be able to go and prosecute all the small home growers. I think that's just a physical endgame kind of scenario in the sense of, you know, overgrowing the system.
Due to losing the folks that we've lost that got pushed off the map federally, we no longer have a single dispensary that's actually offering an in-house sit-down support service.
Right.
And what we can do to work with, because some of the dispensaries that are compassionate don't necessarily have the space.
Right.
There are a number of support groups at dispensaries, but I don't know if they're specifically veterans. I think that's something we have to look into.
Yes.
Because we had a specific veteran support group at Divinity Tree, at Vapor Room,
Sanctuary,
HopeNet. I mean, that kind of took it out, and, you know, Access 11 is so small. Yeah, we've got a veterans group, but, you know, we're a really, really small organization. So that's a lot of folks that lost a pretty critical social medicine.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think one thing I'd like to take out of here in item number 5 is that we have consensus that the impact report, which we've almost got half of legal committee in here, because we've got me, we've got Kenan, and we've got Mike. Can we make sure to get a note to St. Pierre that we need a direct, like, a sentence at least in the impact report regarding veterans services and specific that we've lost them? I wanted to see if it was okay to check in with Stuart about what happened with the cultivation report.
You have a draft process. If I had to boil it down to as few words as possible, I'd say that the central premise is considering this current scenario this year, even a year ago or 2 years ago, with that predicted by the RAND report in anticipation of Proposition 19. And I think one of the most important points of the RAND report was that post-statewide legalization, cannabis could be predicted to cost something like, I think, $588 a pound, which is obviously fundamentally different than what we enjoy right now. So sometimes I think it's important to take a step back and look at the big picture. And I think the big picture is that even though cannabis has been pretty legal in California for 16 years, or at least theoretically legal for 16 years, it still remains on the market as a black market product. And I think that reflects the fact that there's a lot of room for improvement in every aspect.
This may be off topic, but Sonoma County has a lot of providers as opposed to San Francisco, who has a lot of patients and people in need of the product. And we're seeing more and more raids. I guess I can't say more. I'm saying more prosecutions. We've always had a lot of raids, but under the new DA, we have 4 permitted dispensaries from other jurisdictions that are facing charges right now, and one of them starting jury trial next week. So I haven't got permission to do publicity on it yet, but that's one of the things that I do plan on putting out, because I know if they continue to go after permanent dispensaries when we have so many laws on our side, it's just such a waste of our resources right now. And the last case that we saw get this far was Northstone Organics with Bill Panzer, and they literally dismissed the case because the judge thought the arguments were so outrageous. So, knock on wood, we did something so favorable, but with 4 permanent dispensaries, including one here in San Francisco, facing charges just 2 counties up, and they're doing everything completely against the rules, is outrageous. And I don't know if you guys heard about the raid that happened in September, but they used FBI, SWAT team, a sheriff's department, ICE, and they went to the whole neighborhood. They closed down an entire neighborhood and went to 32 homes.
And they were just going down the block.
Yeah.
They literally kidnapped people and took them from site to
in the
site.
morning and detained families and detained people from going to work, people from going to school. They searched every single home.
Wow.
And the first newspaper report said like the 92 houses and 300 plants, 150 officers. That's 2 plants an officer, 10 plants a house when you're allowed to have 30.
Yeah.
So it was well within the limits, and it was a mistake that those news lines got out, because the very next day it was guns and drugs and a lot more worse stuff. But I have a feeling they just raided 2 more houses and
Poured some guns and drugs in there.
The worst part is I was trying to follow up to report for these individuals,
it's a shame.
and I started calling around to see where the 15 arrestees ended up. The sheriff's department only has 3 of them, Santa Rita doesn't have any, and the U.S. Marshals don't have any, which means they were all kidnapped from their homes and deported by ICE.
Patients are allowed to have guns, right? So.
But they were deported by ICE anyway, because I don't care.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
So I plan on taking action with Joe Elford as soon as I can find a defendant. But there's some really serious actions taking place right now.
As upsetting as that
We're living in
is,
some troubled times.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was off topic. I just wanted to point out that cultivators are continuing to be targeted.
I think it was on topic also that some of the dispensaries that, I mean, a lot of times.
Dispensaries are being prosecuted.
Yeah. I mean, there's San Francisco dispensary owners that, in order to bring the prices down for patients, have farms in different counties.
Outdoor,
because it's more affordable, so that we can get our medicine at a lower rate. And, you know, you're allowed to have a collective as state law, just like, you know, we battle here locally about the number 9. You know, a collective is a collective, and in the state law it doesn't say a set number of people as a collective from a set, you know, situation. So,
Sonoma County law enforcement has gone outside of the jurisdiction to here in San Francisco to conduct raids in San Francisco because SFPD refused to. So that does bring it within our jurisdiction.
yeah.
See, this is why I got so crazy about transparency. It's so important when I hear some people say they want private meetings, and I'm not going to mention any names anymore. I don't want to do that, but you know what I'm saying? The transparency. We need transparency. We need to see. Like, I didn't know about this until you just laid me out here. I just thank you for that enlightenment. I had no idea it was that bad.
It just gives you guys the severity of this situation we're talking about here, that it seems like we've come this far, you know, Prop 215 passing, but
Yeah, well,
they shut down the whole neighborhood.
They're saying it's gangs and drugs. And
that's heavy.
Well,
and
and
the only
that's,
reason they can do that is because it's in a bad neighborhood. If they've done that in any, you know, upscale neighborhood, they would not have gone away
Well,
with
sick people live in bad neighborhoods.
I mean, I think we need to, you know, I'd be happy to, you know, when we get through some of this stuff, I'd be happy to take on some of the local issues that are going on in San Francisco regarding Hunters Point, Bayview area. Some of the Black and Brown Just Policy right now is doing some interviews with the press about what's occurring right here, you know, but there's also some issues going on in Mendocino with a subpoena, et cetera, and all of this, it's kind of hard.
Or 9.3 gardens have been raided since those subpoenas have been requested.